We all rely on farmers and ranchers, but farming is riskier than other businesses out there. Crop insurance helps farmers manage their risk. With crop insurance, farmers put skin in the game by paying premiums and shouldering deductibles. That keeps taxpayers from having to pick up the whole bill every time disaster strikes. Today, about 90% of U.S. farmland is insured, providing $100 billion in protection to more than 130 different kinds of crops. It's a testament to the program's success.
Thank you for joining us for our Agri-Pulse Washington Week in Review. I'm Spencer Chase, joined as always by Agri-Pulse Executive Editor Phil Brasher, discussing the week that was, agriculturally speaking, in Washington, D.C. And in Washington, D.C. this week, we saw a handful of regulatory actions, or I suppose you could say deregulatory actions, taken by the Trump administration here in this week before the 2020 election, which has a lot of things up in the balance right now. But administration did take some action that really agriculture had been waiting for quite a while on some of these issues. And want to start with the Dicamba re-registration that the agency offered at an event in Georgia earlier this week. That was a situation where there had been some Ninth Circuit court back and forth, but Phil, the agency coming in and saying that this product can be used now for another 5 years.
Right. They three formulations of a dicamba. They extended them for 5 years. Of course, it's been the subject of a court battle. May still be down the road. However, for now, farmers, I think they have some certainty going into next year.
Right, and of course, there's also the issue of the the application exclusion zones, the AEZs that the EPA addressed yesterday, going from the previous regulation had some specific language on things like droplet size and whatnot. EPA in this approach deciding to go more toward just a flat 25-foot for ground application and a 100-foot zone for aerial application.
Yeah, providing some clarity flexibility that farmers wanted. Yeah, again, something right before the election, and of course the administration wants to get as much of these regulatory decisions out the door as quickly as possible too, with the uncertainty about whether this administration will be continuing. It will have a second term.
Mm-hmm. And we did see on that note an action taken earlier this year by the Trump administration, met with kind of some furrowed brows in the court system as we saw the H-2A worker survey that the Department of Agriculture has been discontinuing. A judge saying that is actually something that the agency is going to need to continue.
Yeah, the Agriculture Department does a survey of farm worker wages every year. And it's this survey that the Labor Department then takes to determine how much farms who import H-2A workers have to pay, or it's the minimum. So it's the floor for what farms have to pay for H-2A labor. USDA just did away. It said they were doing away with this survey, didn't say, and said that there was other sources of data. Labor Department had not said what they were going to do. Farm labor groups, advocates were outraged. They said this would essentially allow farms to pay the state or federal minimum wage, which would essentially be a pay cut for H-2A workers next year. Now, practically speaking, another piece of this is the Labor Department is rewriting the regulations for H-2A. There is a final rule on that issue now at the White House for interagency review. That's going to be coming out, it's expected in, by December, or early December at least. And that may make some changes too. But so it's really up in the air what the wage rates are going to be for H-2A. But USDA has been told by this court whether they're going to appeal or not. We don't know, but USDA has been told by this federal judge that they have to go forward and continue doing that survey. So we'll see what USDA does and what the Labor Department does in response to that, or whether they have come up with something new. We just don't know.
Mhm. So more to be seen on that, as well as some of those other issues in terms of whether or not there's potential legal challenge from some environmental groups or some other interests that are opposed to that issue. Also, just want to briefly make mention of a action by the Trump administration to delist the gray wolf in the lower 48, the continental U.S. That's an action a lot of groups have been pushing for as well. But again, something that had been fought out in the court system, and now we do see some action from the Trump administration. Obviously, these are a handful of issues that we're breezing through fairly quickly here. I would encourage you, if you're interested, stop by agripulse.com. We've got more thoughtful, more detailed coverage there. But Phil, before we let everybody go this week, want to just kind of talk about, obviously, as I'm sure many of you are aware, there is an election next week, and so want to make sure that we give the folks a little bit of something to watch in terms of what we're keeping our eyes on here next Tuesday and into the coming days as the vote total gets counted. So let's I suppose start at the top of the ballot and work our way down, Phil, and in terms of the Biden versus Trump, or Trump versus Biden, depending on your ideological view of the situation. Well, anything in particular you're watching for in terms of outcomes, trends, et cetera, in the presidential race?
Well, the big issue that we've been watching, and I'll be watching on Tuesday, is the margins in rural areas. The Democrats and the broadly and the Biden campaign have been paying a lot more attention to the rural vote, not because they think they're going to necessarily carry rural areas. They don't expect to carry rural counties, but what is very important for Democrats is to cut into the Republican margins. Donald Trump did much, much better than previous Republican candidates had done in many rural counties. Or put another way, Hillary Clinton did much worse than Barack Obama in a lot of counties in Iowa, Wisconsin, and those battleground swing states. Democrats are, so we're going to be watching to see if Democrats have significantly cut into those margins. If they do, combined with what they're doing in suburban areas, or expect to do in suburban areas, it's potentially going to be a good night for Joe Biden and for Democrats down ballot.
Well, and you mentioned Democrats down ballot. Let's talk about some of those down ballot races, even though, for some folks, the House and Senate are not necessarily a down ballot. Those are very important races for a lot of reasons. But looking at the Senate, this is an issue where control of the chamber is really hanging in the balance, and hanging in the balance kind of on the backs of some members that have either currently are on the Ag Committee or have spent some time on that committee and working on rural issues.
Right. Republicans now have 53 seats. If Democrats win the White House, they only need 50 seats in order to control the Senate, because Kamala Harris would presumably cast the swing vote. So if you play the scenario where Joe Biden wins the White House, Democrats need 50 seats. They currently have 47. Now, Republicans expect to win the Alabama seat, flip that seat, now held by Democrat Doug Jones. So they think they've got 4-seat leeway, but there are a number of races, at least 3, where Maine, Arizona, and Colorado, where Democrats are heavily favored. So that puts Democrats win those races. They need presumably 1 more, 2 more. And that really puts the focus on some of these ag states. 2 of them really jump out. That's Iowa, where Joni Ernst is in a very tight re-election race with Teresa Greenfield, and Montana, where Senator Steve Daines, he's not on the Ag Committee. He's now on Finance and Appropriations, 2 plum assignments, 2 very powerful committees. He's running for re-election against the popular governor of the state, Steve Bullock. So Iowa, Montana, both close races. Another one that's very close is Tom Tillis, and Republican incumbent in North Carolina, where he's in a tight race with Cal Cunningham, the Democrat. So those 3 states, and there could be others in play as well, but those appear to be the toughest. There's also a couple of close races in Georgia as well. So there's a lot to watch.
Well, and then as we work, to the other side of Capitol Hill, again, a number of close races. It's widely expected that Democrats are going to retain their majority in that chamber. I don't know what kind of election day surprise it would be if Republicans were to retake that chamber. But of the races that are competitive, a lot of them involve members of the House Ag Committee.
Right. Of course, the number one race, the one that everybody in agriculture is watching, is the 7th district in Minnesota, where a heavily Republican district, where Colin Peterson, the House Agriculture Committee chairman, and a member of Congress since first won election in 1990, has been there for 3 decades. He's running for re-election. Ag groups have been pouring money into that state on his behalf, but it is a tough district. Donald Trump won it by more than 30 points in 2016. Colin Peterson has been able to hang on for years. Big question is whether he can do it again. And there are a number of other districts that are up in Iowa, southern Minnesota, the 1st district down there. That's a close race. A couple of races in Illinois as well. Those are and there's some House Ag Committee members that are facing close races. Abigail Spanberger, who chairs the House Ag Conservation Subcommittee, the subcommittee in charge of conservation programs. She's been very active in her role there. She's up for re-election in Virginia, largely a rural district that catches the suburbs of Richmond. And then Anthony Brindisi up in New York State, he's in a close race as well.
So just keep in mind, we're offering you a very high level view of some of the races we're going to be keeping an eye on here on Election Day and in the days to follow. Would encourage you that if you're interested in the election results and specifically what those election results are going to mean for farm policy, keep an eye on Agri-Pulse.com. Keep an eye on the Agri-Pulse Twitter feed on election night. We'll be sure to keep you up to date with those races as they come official, but also would encourage you to stop by the Agri-Pulse Facebook page next Wednesday at noon Eastern. Phil and I will be hosting a discussion with some farm policy experts on some of those election results, and not only what what we will know at the time, of course, because this vote total might take a little bit longer to count than some previous years. So what we will know at the time and what that will mean for kind of the lame duck session as well as the years to come. So a lot of things hanging in the balance. I'll tell all of you the same thing I've been telling everyone that's asked me about the election here these last couple of months. We'll all be smarter on November 4th. And personally, I'm looking forward to being a lot smarter. So I think that's going to do it for this week. So for Phil Brasher, I'm Spencer Chase. Have a good one.